Kim, what's on your radar?
While speaking at the Munich Security Conference this past weekend, Bill Gates was asked about where he thinks we're at in regards to the pandemic. Here's his response.
Where would you assess where we are today in beating COVID-19?
Well, sadly, the virus itself, particularly the variant called Omicron, is a type of vaccine. That is, it creates both B-cell and T-cell immunity. And it's done a better job of getting out to the world population than we have with vaccines. If you do sero surveys in African countries, you get well over 80% of people have been exposed either to the vaccine or to various variants. And so, what that does is it means the chance of severe disease, which is mainly associated with being elderly and having obesity or diabetes, those risks are now dramatically reduced because of that infection exposure. And, it's sad we didn't do a great job on therapeutics. Only here 2 years in do we have a good therapeutic. Vaccines, it took us 2 years to be in oversupply. Today, there are more vaccines than there is demand for vaccines. And that wasn't true. And next time we should try and make it, instead of 2 years, we should make it more like 6 months, which certainly, some of the standardized platform approaches, including mRNA, would allow us to do that. So, it took us a lot longer this time than it should have.
So there's a lot to unpack here in that clip, so we're going to break it down bit by bit. First, he says, sadly, Omicron is a type of vaccine, that it creates both B-cell and T-cell immunity. Now, why he says sadly is anyone's guess, and many people are speculating. We know Omicron comes with a much lower risk of death, so it seems like it would be more of a relief than sad for Omicron to be infecting people and giving them protection from more severe possible future variants. But the fact is, he admits Omicron is a type of vaccine. In other words, Bill Gates admits natural immunity is a real and robust thing. Where was he when this news when nurses and doctors were being fired for refusing vaccines because they already essentially had one, previous infection? He then goes on to talk about Africa and how 80% of the population in many areas of the continent have been exposed to either various variants of the virus or to the vaccine, and this has given them protection. He says the chance of severe disease is now dramatically reduced because of it. And I'm not sure what's sad about that, especially when you take a closer look at Africa. Now, this should also cause us to question all of the measures we've taken and how effective they've been. Johns Hopkins has already come out saying most of our measures have caused more harm than good and shouldn't be used again. Yet, here's Bill Gates, seemingly recommending that next time we do what Australia has done.
Is it possible to prevent the next pandemic?
Yes, if every country does what Australia did, then you wouldn't be calling it a pandemic. That's all.
Yikes. Bill Gates is not a doctor. He's not a scientist, an epidemiologist, or a health expert. But he's a man of disproportionate influence because in this world, money nearly buys everything, and it certainly buys power. He has given billions of dollars to some of our most influential organizations that make decisions on how we handle these sorts of health situations. If he's walking away from this thinking Australia is the way to go, then people who value freedom and choice should be worried, especially since he says we'll see another pandemic, and Robbie's really going to hate hearing this, but he says we'll still be forced to wear masks to some degree. Take a listen.
In terms of combating COVID-19 and the potential for another pandemic, are we going to see another pandemic before we are able to beat this one?
Well, we'll have another pandemic. It will be a different pathogen next time.
Wait a minute. Who are you?
We'll have some rebound. This pathogen, we don't have a tool to do eradication. We'd like to have a new generation of vaccines that would be suitable. I mean, ideally, we'd get rid of families of respiratory viruses, including the flu family and the coronavirus family. And I do think in the next decade we can come up with an eradication vaccine. That's an aspiration, not a guarantee, but we should put R&D dollars into that. There's already a lot of work that's been done on a universal flu vaccine, and the data on that looks very promising. So we'll have rebounds, but they'll be more typical seasonal flu levels, where, of course, we don't generally shut things down, although in the future, some degree of mask wearing probably will be indicated but we won't get death levels at the kind of acute level that we're still experiencing today as the Omicron wave passes through on a global basis.
So there you go. Needless to say, if Mr. Gates wants to come on the channel, we'd be more than delighted to have him. So that sounded like pretty good news to me on natural immunity, as far as I can tell. But what's confused me is let's look at what Mr. Gates actually said here. Sadly, the virus itself, particularly the variant called Omicron, is a type of vaccine creates both B and T memory cell immunity. And it's done a better job of getting out into the world population than we have with vaccines. Sero survey in African countries 80% positive. Chances of severe disease dramatically reduced because of that infection exposure. And it's true we didn't do a great job on therapeutics. So what I need you to help me with is why is he saying sadly to this? Why does he prefix that with sadly? If I'd been saying something similar, I would have said I'm happy that, or pleased that, or, well, in actual fact, I'm delirious, delighted, ecstatic about this, because it means that billions of people around the world are being protected from severe disease by natural immunity to the virus, particularly Omicron. And now, as we might see, we'll see how we go for time today, but particularly Omicron BA2. So a bit confused by that. So just to mark this briefly, sadly, we'll give that a question mark. I'm not sure why he said sadly. But the variant called Omicron is a type of vaccine, creates both B and T cell immunity. Hallelujah. It's done a better job of getting out into the world and the population than we have. Very much true. The doctors we talk to in Uganda, of course, say that basically now no one's getting sick. Omicron has spread throughout the whole country and it's protected the entire population with minimal amount of people getting ill. It just couldn't be better. So I'm not sure why he says sadly here. Sero survey in African countries about 80% positive and presumably rising all the time because we must be in an endemic situation. And this, of course, is giving rise to huge natural herd immunity. And as Mr. Gates correctly said, chances of severe disease dramatically reduced because of the infection exposure. Correct. And he's right in saying we didn't do a great job on therapeutics, and we could argue about that for a long time. So just slightly confused why he was sad. I'm not quite sure what he's referring to. If Mr. Gates wants to come on, of course, you're more than welcome. Clarify it, talk about it. I'd love to talk to you.